Happy So Lucky. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this improv-ish tree block here that I made a sample for the Wollongong Modern Quilt Guild in Australia. They're collecting blocks for quilts for those that have lost their homes to the wildfires in Australia. The block itself is a combination of curve piecing and some FPP, or just improv if you're not an FPP person. And the way I'm going to teach you to do it is you're going to design your own top section here. So each of those will be different as people make them differently. I made mine with a light and a dark green on either side, and I actually mixed up a little bit of the green in subtle shades just to give it a little bit more energy. The fabrics that I'm going to be using today to show you will be a little bit less patchy. I'm going to be using these ones over here. I have a little bit of Giuseppe Juicy Juice's blue fabric. I quite like the colour of it. It reminded me a little bit of blue gum trees, which is obviously appropriate. And then I have some solids on either side. This makeup here is based on the larger tree of the one that I made, the same proportions, but really the height can be as high and as low as you want. The only critical measurement when you're making it is that whatever the base is, the width of your base, needs to be the same as the width of your triangle. So I'm going to show you now how I did my version of this. These look like they're improv, but really they are paper pieced. So I like paper piecing, as you know. I just feel that I can know exactly how it's going to pan out, but realistically, if you're an improver and not a paper piecer, you could quite easily just improv this piece and then cut it to the size that you need. And you wouldn't even have to do it necessarily with, green and branches. You could just crazy piece this whole section if you wanted, or make a little triangular log cabin. You could do all kinds of things with it, or gradated shades of green, as long as you end up with a triangle. So as I mentioned, I paper pieced my triangles on my tree here. This one here is a finished height of 6 inches by 2 inches. This one is a finished height of 4.5 by 1.5. But as I said earlier, it doesn't really matter what the height is, as long as the width is the same as whatever your curve piece is. So I have uploaded on my blog, there's this template that you can download, and that is for a 1.5 and a 2-inch radius quarter circle, and that'll make these two sizes. But you might have at home something like this, Perspex templates from a different pattern, and you could use that too. And if you use something like this, you just need to make sure that when you design your triangle, that your base is going to be the height of the finished radius of your quarter circle. So I have cut the pieces already for the larger 6-inch one. So today I'm going to show you how to draw up the triangles for the 4.5. Okay, so we're going to draw 2 lines that are 4.5 inches high, 1 inch apart, sort of in the middle of your page. So the first one is going to be here. It goes to 4.5, and then I just move my ruler up 1 inch, line that up there, and draw another that is 4.5. And then I'm going to slide my ruler further along so that it's still on the lines. You can't really see through the ruler, but my lines are here and here. And I'm going to draw a 1.5 inch line on the base there. And my other line is coming down here, so I'm going to go 1.5 inches there. So that there is 4.5, and that there is 1.5. And again, this is just based on my one. As long as your baseline is the same as your quarter triangle, you can go as high as you like. Then we're going to finish off the triangle by joining our points. And then we're going to take our ruler and place the 1/4 inch mark over here on the long side of the triangle, the diagonal side of the triangle, and just draw a nice long line like that, and the same on this one here. And then we're going to do a 1/4 inch line from the bottom of the triangle, and of course the last side here. Now the reason that I did mine 1 inch apart is when you're planning your branches, it's nice to see how they're going to correspond with each other. So now you sort of have to think about how many branches you want. On this example, on the smaller one, I just did 2 branches on each side, and I'm probably going to do the same for this one. On the larger one I did 3, but you could have as many or as few as you want, or you could design something totally different, just a whole bunch of lines going up, and as I mentioned earlier, you could do radiating greens. So I'm just going to do random lines going from each side to there, and you sort of want them to get the improv feel. You want to have different, so some of mine are pointy, some of mine are straight, some of them are a little bit squonk. I'm just sort of drawing randomly lines up. I think that one I want to come to a point. And the point, of course, this is going to be your cut line, this will be your stitch line. So if you want to come to a point, that's where the point needs to be. Now to give myself an idea when I draw the other side, I'm actually going to colour these in because it'll give me a better feeling for how they're going to look. So this will be my blue fabric, or it's sort of a blue-green, but I'm going with blue for now to differentiate it. And of course it will be the opposite. So if I want the lighter yellowy green on this side and the darker green on this side, it'll be the opposite in the paper. So I'm just going to remind myself that this is my dark green. You can of course write it in as well, but I find that that's just quicker and easier. So now for the opposite side, I don't necessarily want these exactly lining up because I'm going with the improv look, but if you wanted to have them line up, that's how you would do that. You would just have them, you could work it out that they lined up perfectly. But I'm trying to get a different look and feel on mine. So, oh sorry, that one's meant to go all the way. You should go all the way into the seam allowance. And then again I can just colour it in. So this will be the finished area that you see. So that'll give me a sort of a feeling for how my branches are going to look when they're pieced. And if you have a look on these ones that I did, here I'll show you. You can see that they're a little bit different from each other as well. I didn't try and line them up exactly. And then all you have to do is cut these guys out, and you're cutting it on the outside seam allowance edge. So there you have your 2 pieces, and again just reminding myself that this one is going to be my yellower green. So you'll see when they're pieced, it's always the other way around. The yellow will be on this side, which will match my other tree that I have for the other side, as I did on this one here. Okay, so you're going to paper piece your 2 tree triangles. Either paper piece them, or if you're an improv piecer and don't want a paper piece, you're going to improv them and then cut them to the size that I gave you. This tutorial doesn't teach you how to paper piece because I have lots of tutorials on my YouTube channel on paper piecing, which you can have a look at if you need to learn that. I'm also not teaching you how to curve piece. I have a curve piecing video that I'm planning in the near future, so you can look out for that, but there are numerous tutorials online that have curve piecing. This is just about the tree block. So I have all my pieces laid out here, and I'm now going to show you how to assemble it. It's really quite simple. We're going to start off by putting a background piece onto the long side of our triangles. So I'm just going to do that now. I've pre-cut mine, but you don't have to have them pre-cut. And you'll notice that if you look at it this way, it looks like this piece is too long for that piece there, but if you look at it from the back side, you'll see that because of the very pointy angle, there's a lot of excess here. So I know that this piece already is a little bit higher than what it needs to be. So I'm just going to put that on there. So you can see there, my background piece goes well above the height of my triangle. So that works out well. Oopsie, just lining that up. When you use your roller, be sure to get a nice flat seam. It's quite easy for a piece to get folded over in the seam, and then not only does it not look great, but it also will affect your distances. So now I'm going to just trim these two down to a little bit of excess of the background so that I have a nice straight bottom edge on these. Don't have to film it. There we go, those are good. And I'm just going to put the background piece onto the side of the bottom of the tree. So one on each of those guys. So the width of this one here is really dependent on your quilt that you're designing and how you want them to fit together. Just bear in mind when you do put the side pieces on that it needs to be on the side and not on the bottom, because if I put it on this side, for example, I'd end up with, it wouldn't work out because my side piece would be, my curved piece would be upside down. So just be cognizant of that. So now I'm going to join the tree triangle part to the bottom of the tree on each side, and then I'm going to stitch the bottom to the bottom of that. Again, I backstitch when I start on the paper piecing, because when you pull the papers out, the stitching can come undone, so that just prevents that happening. Now what I should have done is checked when I put these two pieces together that those were going to line up, and I see they're pretty good. That's lucky. But really before you stitch it you should check that, so I'll do that on the next side. I'll just give that a quick roll. Oops. That's fortunate. So when you're lining these up, you want that point, not the end point, but the point a 1/4 inch in, to obviously match with that piece there. And a good way of doing that is just put them together, lining up the stitching side and the other end, and then just fold it over about a 1/4 inch and you can see if it's going to line up. I'm just going to nudge mine slightly out that way. And hopefully that'll work. These are also improv-ish, so if it's slightly off, it's not the end of the world. It's part of the look. How are we doing on that one? That one's pretty good too. So that's lucky. And then I'm going to put the bottom end on. My edges over here are not lining up, and that's just because I cut sort of random widths because I'm not quite sure how I'm going to place these blocks together yet. Just showing you the tree part. That's the one half done. And the other half. And then we're going to trim the tops here so that they line up flush, and we're going to attach the stem of the tree, but I'm first going to give these guys a press. And now we're going to trim the top edge, but we're going to do this upside down. So we're going to show the paper side, and the reason for that is we want to make sure that these two align here, these two points align here, but also that these points align here, and that's going to be our critical point for matching up the height of the tree. So I've just lined up the bottom of the curve and lined up the bottom of the triangle, and then I'm going to trim with a right angle to the triangles here, so that I'm 1/4 of an inch from the top of the very tippy point. If you have a look there, you can see the very pointy point. I'm cutting straight across 1/4 of an inch. So this will help us line up the left to the right sides when we put the trunk in. I cut mine 3/4 of an inch and with an extra length because I want to end up with a 1/4 inch trunk as I did on this one. I quite like the skinny look, but of course you could make yours fatter if you want. If you do make yours fatter, you're going to end up with a wider flat edge at the top, just to bear that in mind. Or you could point your trees like that and have a tapered tree if you want, and then you could just cut your background area square after you've done that. But I quite like that skinny long rectangular part, so that's how I'm going to be doing mine. So I have my piece of trunk here, and I'm just going to lie it right side down onto my my tree part, and I'm going to sew it from the paper edge because then I can see exactly where the 1/4 inch seam is, and remembering of course to backstitch at the start. And as I go, I'm just going to make sure that the edge of my trunk part here is lining up with the edge of my tree. So I've pressed this nicely, and I'm going to cut off this little extra piece here because that's going to make it easy for us to line up, so that when we put ours together, that little point there will line up with this point here. So I'm going to take this other side and just put it right sides together, line it up like that, and then I'm going to stitch this. And this time I'm actually starting from the paper piecing is underneath. The reason for that is I want to start on this tip end just in case the fabric pushes out a little bit. I want to make sure that that is in place. So I'm going to clip that together, and then I'm just going to check as well, just hold those boys together. I'm just going to check that my bottom end of this one line up with the bottom end of the other one. So I'm folding it back, and I can see that teeny bit of the dark green is lining up with the yellow, so we're good there too. I'll just clip that in place. And it doesn't really matter if my 1/4 inch seam here is not perfectly 1/4 inch, although it will be because I'm basically going to be stitching right on the edge here. But if the trunk is slightly wider, it's not the end of the world. Now, ordinarily I wouldn't backstitch fabric to fabric, but remember there's paper underneath here that's going to get pulled out, so I'm going to backstitch that. You can see that the paper is pushing it slightly away from the edge here as I'm going, but it's just about 1 millimeter, it doesn't matter. because our horizontal pieces are still in place, you can see. Normally I'm super anal about things like that, but given that this is an improv-ish design, I'm going to let it go. So you can see that that's lining up nicely. And our last step is to put the top piece on top there. So what I'm going to do is my piece that I've cut for the width, I worked out that I wanted my bigger tree, which is this one, on my block to be about 7 inches wide. So I cut this piece about 7 inches wide. I'm just folding it to find the middle point of it, and I'll just place that roughly in the middle of my tree trunk over here. Right sides together, of course. And I'm just going to stitch that on. So I've just pressed it, and now my one tree is done. So I'll cut that down to size and then figure out my smaller tree, what size I'm going to make. But basically this is how you put the improv-ish trees together, and as I said, you can make these any size you want. So here is the small block pieced and joined to the large block. I'm showing it from the back and the front so that you can see how that little improv template that we drew up in the beginning of the tutorial, how it panned out once made. And I put a little piece of migrating birds above it, which I'm kind of in love with. And here are my first block and my second block. They're both 12.5 inches unfinished size, side by side. And you can see how the trees compare with each other. In the improv section, they look different to each other, and there's a sort of a playfulness between them thanks to the improv technique. And so it's a really fun block to make. They can be quite addictive once you get going. I think a whole quilt out of these would be really fun. And for those of you that coordinate your Guild Block of the Month's projects, this would be a fab Block of the Month for a Guild project. Post a pic of your makes of this project on social media and tag it with Improv-ish Tree Quilt to share with the rest of us. Happy stitching!